Welcome everyone in our virtual audience around the world. We're so glad you could join us for this event on End Poverty Day 2020, Surmounting Setbacks. I'm Larry Medowo, North America correspondent at the BBC, and it's such an honor to host this event. Let's take a look at the challenges that confront us as we unite to end poverty.
We all hope for a better future, that our children will be safer, healthier, more prosperous than the generation before. We expect progress, but we face an unprecedented challenge. The gravest reversal in global poverty reduction in a generation. The latest numbers are stark. Extreme poverty is rising for the first time in more than 2 decades. The goal of ending extreme poverty has been set back by at least 3 years.
I'm joined now by Axel van Trotzenberg. He's the World Bank's Managing Director for Operations.
Well, we at the World Bank are extremely concerned. After decades of steady progress in reducing extreme poverty, and for example, in the last decade, lifting more than 500 million people out of extreme poverty, we are seeing a reversal of this trend. And this trend has come with COVID-19, where we are now estimating that between 88 and 115 million people will fall back into extreme poverty. This is of such global magnitude, COVID-19, that we are seeing this trend. But clearly there are other factors at play as well. Two are very, very prominent, is conflict as well as climate change. State conflict, unfortunately, about 40% of the extreme poor are today living in conflict-affected countries. And this trend is going to increase. Also, climate change is having a massive impact also on extreme poverty, particularly in the poorest countries. And what we are making the case for is we can, in times of crisis, not leave countries that are among the poorest out of our concerns. There is a question of international solidarity, but it is also smart investment to help these countries back on track. That is what we are advocating, that's what we're doing every single day, and what we need to continue to do so.
For now, let's hear from women small business owners in Colombia who are benefiting from loans from Banco de Vivienda to keep their companies afloat during the crisis and to protect the jobs they provide.
Igual queremos decirles a ustedes que nuestra intención es pagar, pero pensamos que con el plazo lo podemos hacer. Estamos haciendo una nueva reorganización, estamos haciendo un plan estratégico y estamos viendo que después de esto del COVID, de estar confinados, queremos hacer las cosas bien, queremos hacerlas y tenemos que reinventarnos. Eso sería lo que les quiero dejar y que pasen una feliz tarde.
And now, to talk more about how we can mobilize companies and business to respond more effectively to coronavirus, I'm joined by Strive Masiyiwa, founder of the Econet Group.
Africa's response is probably one of the best in the world in terms of containing the mortality. But it's a work in progress. I, for instance, have a group of the private sector that meets, it's almost 200 strong from every single country. We meet every week. And that has banks, it has pharmaceutical companies, it has telecoms companies. So we encourage them to work together, to reach out within their sector and to discuss things they can do that are short-term, that are medium-term, and that are long-term. There's no better tool to fight poverty than entrepreneurship. When young people are supported to set up businesses, they can create jobs, they can create wealth, and that's how you fight poverty. It's ground zero in fighting poverty.
The World Bank Group has been hearing from young people around the world about their experiences, their fears, and their hopes.
Personally, COVID had a huge effect on my mental well-being because the only connection we have with each other is through social media. But thank God this exists.
Truth be told, we are the only ones that can rebuild Nigeria, and this time we'll rebuild Nigeria, and we are going to build back better.
Here's one statistic to get you thinking. The World Bank Group estimates that by 2030, countries that are affected by conflict and fragility will be home to 2/3 of the world's poorest people. I'm joined now by two civil society activists who have a long experience in this field.
People affected by conflict that leads to migration and displacement. It's to do with people's access to basic services and people's access to jobs. And also it's to do with people's general livelihoods.
SFD has focusing on delivering cash-based services, either through the cash for work or the cash for nutrition, as well as supporting and sustaining the SMEs. During the last 5 years, with support from donors, including the World Bank, SFD has reached more than 470,000 households with cash-based assistance. This is about 10% of the households in Yemen.
Now, let's turn to the challenge of climate change.
The result is that the poorest are left to live in areas that are most likely to flood, and by settling there, they actually increase the extent of that flooding. The other factor to bear in mind is that the poorest don't have access to the basic services and infrastructure that would reduce the extent or the impact of flooding. Stormwater drains, piped water, decent sanitation, weather-resistant roads.
We had a huge super cyclone called Amphan a couple of months ago that in past decades had actually killed tens of thousands of people. This one only killed a few dozen people because we were successful in evacuating more than 2.5 million people who got out of the path, took shelter in cyclone shelters, and were able to come out. They still did a lot of damage, but the lives lost has been brought down to practically zero. And that's probably the best cyclone warning system in the whole world. So even though Bangladesh is a poor country and people are poor, if they know what to do, they can reduce the impacts of climate change very significantly. And this is true for other developing countries as well.
We've heard from developing countries, but the developed countries also have an important role to play.
There are limits to what we can achieve by states acting on their own individually. So the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office support a renewed and rejuvenated multilateralism. We want to strengthen the international institutions that help countries tackle together the common threats that they can't tackle on their own. And together, our aim must be that this time next year we'll have succeeded together in containing COVID-19 and restoring the trajectory of sustained and sustainable poverty reduction.
Dr. Sania Nishtar has direct experience of fighting poverty on the front lines. She is the Federal Minister for Poverty Alleviation and Social Safety in Pakistan and joins us from Islamabad.
This experience has helped us fast-track the adoption of cost-effective digital ways of working and new ways of coordinating across multiple stakeholders. And it has led us to believe that it is possible for the government to embrace innovation and deliver with dignity and integrity at scale.
Our final guest has a very special message. Ngwashi Christabel Afalung is an inspiring young doctor from Cameroon and an activist for women's health and strengthening community and preventive healthcare.
There are lessons we can learn on how countries can better respond to pandemics like COVID-19 and conflict. We need to ensure that we don't repeat the same mistakes next time a pandemic strikes. We need to learn from this experience, tackle the foundational issues, and ensure that we build systems that are resilient enough to withstand these challenges. We need to prepare comprehensively and proactively. Let's act urgently and build for the future. Thank you.